Millionaire humiliates Stephen Curry on luxury flight and quickly finds himself in trouble. He was used to getting what he wanted, flashing cash, flying private, and treating life like a VIP lounge. That was his world. Stephen Curry, just another athlete in a sea of them. Or so he thought. But on a luxury flight from Los Angeles to Miami, one millionaire decided to show off and picked the wrong guy to humiliate. What happened next spread like wildfire across social media, and it all started with a smirk and a comment no one should have made. It was supposed to be just another high-end charter flight for Richard Langston, a self-made tech mogul worth over $200 million. Private jet, leather seats, champagne on tap, no screaming kids, no airport security lines. Just him, a few other wealthy passengers, and a smooth ride across the sky. He checked in early, dressed in a tailored suit, sunglasses never leaving his face. As he stepped onto the plane, he spotted someone familiar near the back. Curry, Stephen Curry, the NBA legend, two-time MVP. One of the greatest shooters in basketball history. Langston paused. He had heard of Curry, of course. Who hadn't? But to him, athletes were just entertainers. Rich, yes, but not his kind of rich. So he did what he always did when he saw someone famous. He smiled, he stared, and then he talked, loud enough for everyone to hear. Didn't know this was a celebrity flight, he said, smirking as he passed Curry's seat. I guess even stars need first class these days. A few people chuckled. Others looked away, uncomfortable. Curry didn't react, just kept reading his book. Langston took that as weakness. He sat down 2 rows ahead, already planning how he'd tell this story at his next dinner party. Little did he know, this flight was about to become the most humiliating experience of his life. Langston leaned back in his seat, sipping his drink like he owned the sky. He glanced over his shoulder again. Curry was still reading. Calm, quiet, too quiet. Langston didn't like that. He turned to the flight attendant who had just walked by. "Hey," he said, snapping his fingers. "Can I get another glass? This one's almost empty." She smiled politely and took his glass. Then he looked at Curry again. "You know," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I bet you don't even pay for your own flights anymore. Must be nice having people hand you things." A few passengers stiffened. One man shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Another woman quietly pulled out her phone. She had a feeling this was going somewhere bad. But Curry, still reading, still silent. Langston smirked. "I guess when you make $500 million playing a kid's game, you don't have to worry about anything, huh?" That's when it happened. Curry slowly closed his book, looked up, and finally spoke. Curry looked at Langston like he was a kid who had just stepped on his shoe in the school cafeteria. Not angry, just disappointed. He set his book down, turned slightly in his seat and said, "You done?" Langston blinked. He wasn't expecting that. "Excuse me?" he asked. "I said," Curry replied calmly. "Are you done?" "Because I was trying to read." Langston sat up straighter. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. You didn't earn your money the hard way. You shot some hoops." "I built an empire." Curry tilted his head. "Is that right?" Langston nodded proudly. "Yeah, tech startup. Went viral, made my first million by 30. Now, I don't even track it." A few people glanced around. Some were watching closely now. Others kept their eyes glued to their screens, too nervous to look. Curry leaned forward just a little. Then he smiled. It wasn't a mean smile, but it wasn't friendly either. "You know," he said, voice still calm, "you remind me of someone." Langston raised an eyebrow. "Oh yeah? Who's that?" Curry shrugged. "Some guy I met a long time ago, back when I was still trying to make it. He told me I'd never make it. Said I was too small, too soft, too slow." Langston smirked again. "And what happened to him?" Curry gave a small laugh. "He owns a car wash now." That got a few quiet chuckles from passengers who had been holding their breath. Langston's face tightened. He wasn't used to being laughed at. Not by anyone. Especially not by someone he thought he could outshine. He opened his mouth to say something else, but before he could, Curry stood up. and the whole cabin seemed to shift. Curry stood tall, stretching just a bit in the narrow aisle. He looked around the cabin for a moment, then back at Langston. "You want to talk about building something?" Curry asked. Langston crossed his arms. "Yeah, let's talk about it." Curry nodded. Then he said something that made everyone freeze. "All right, let's start with the fact that I own a piece of this airline." Silence. Not even the hum of the engines could fill the space left by that sentence. Langston blinked. "What?" I said. Curry repeated, calm as ever. "I own part of this airline. Invested a few years ago. Small stake, but enough to get a say in things." Langston's mouth opened, then closed. He looked around. The flight attendants avoided eye contact. One of them had turned slightly red. Curry smiled again. "But that's not all." Langston leaned forward now, like he was trying to catch every word. "I also know the pilot." Curry continued. "And the co-pilot. We've flown together a few times." Someone gasped quietly. Langston shook his head. "You're lying." Curry shrugged. "Check your phone." "Go ahead. Ask the crew." Langston turned to the nearest flight attendant. "Is this true?" She hesitated, then gave a small nod. Langston's face went pale. Curry sat back down, then added one more thing. "Oh, and by the way, I don't fly commercial. Never have. If I'm on a private jet, it's because I own it, or I'm flying with someone who does." Langston didn't respond. For the first time since the flight began, he had nothing to say. Langston sat back in his seat, stunned. For the first time in years, he wasn't the richest, most powerful person in the room. And worse, everyone on the plane now knew it. He tried to act cool, forced a smile, shrugged like it was no big deal. "Okay," he said, voice quieter now. "So you've got some money. Big deal." But no one laughed this time. No one even looked at him. They were all watching Curry, who had gone back to reading his book like nothing had happened. Langston shifted uncomfortably. He reached for his phone, hoping for a distraction. That's when he noticed something strange. His Instagram feed was filling up with comments from people he didn't know, pictures of him on the plane, quotes from things he'd said during the flight. Someone had live tweeted the whole thing, and it was blowing up. One post already had over 100,000 likes. "Millionaire tries to flex on Stephen Curry. It does not go well." Langston's stomach dropped. He looked around again. Several passengers were on their phones now. Some were recording, others were messaging furiously. The story was out, and it was spreading fast. He turned back to Curry, desperate to regain control. "I don't care what people say," he muttered. "I still built something." Curry finally looked up again. This time he didn't smile. He just said, "Then maybe work on building some class." And with that, he turned the page. Langston stared at his phone as the notifications kept coming. Twitter, Instagram, Reddit. Everywhere he looked, there it was. Him, smirking, talking, looking foolish. The video had already been shared by a few big accounts. One had over 5 million followers. Another was known for taking down arrogant influencers. And now, Langston was trending, not in a good way. He scrolled through the comments like he was in a nightmare. "This guy is why rich people have a bad name." Stephen Curry didn't even break a sweat. "Never try to flex on someone who doesn't care about your money." Langston clenched his jaw. He tried to post something, anything, to explain. "I was just joking around," he wrote. No one believed him. Minutes later, someone posted a clip from inside the jet. You could hear every word he'd said. The mockery, the arrogance, the embarrassment. It was all there. And now, millions of people were watching. Langston leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes. For the first time in his life, he wished he could disappear. Langston opened his eyes. The flight was still hours from landing, but he already knew this trip would never end. Not really, because the internet doesn't forget. He pulled up his phone again, hands shaking slightly. First stop, Twitter. Big mistake. Someone had dug up an old interview he'd done years ago. In it he bragged about how money changed everything. "If you've got enough cash," he had said, "people will kiss your feet." Now, People were laughing at them. Then came another post, a video from a charity event he attended last year. He had made a joke then too, something about how poor people just needed to work harder. That clip was now trending alongside the flight footage. Langston's stomach twisted. He scrolled more. Reddit had started a thread titled, "Every time Richard Langston flexed his wealth," ranked. It listed every public moment where he showed off his money, luxury watches, private jets, gold-plated gadgets, and worst of all, a viral TikTok he had posted just months ago. In it he walked into a fancy restaurant and told the waiter, "I don't care what the menu says, I want whatever the most expensive thing is." Back then, people called him baller. Now, they called him pathetic. Langston shut his phone off. He didn't want to see any more. But even with the screen dark, the damage was done. Langston sat stiff in his seat, staring at the dark screen of his phone. He needed to fix this, fast. As soon as the plane landed, he started making calls, first to his publicist, then to his lawyer. "We need a statement," he said the moment they picked up. "Something strong. I was misunderstood." His publicist sighed on the other end. "Richard, it's already everywhere. People don't want an apology. They want blood." Langston didn't care. He drafted a post. "I was just being playful. Not everything is serious. Stephen Curry is a great guy, and I meant no harm." It got over 10,000 comments in 10 minutes. Most of them, "You weren't playful. You were rude. You only care because you're getting called out. Too late for damage control." Langston tried again. This time he posted a video, smiling, friendly. "I've made mistakes. We all have. Let's not cancel people for being human." That backfired even worse. People saw it as fake, a performance, like he was trying to play the victim. Even worse, someone dug up old texts from one of his ex-employees. In them, Langston had called his staff replaceable, and joked about how he paid them less than he paid his dog Walker. That text went viral. Langston watched his follower count drop, not fast, but steadily. One by one, people were unfollowing, blocking, calling him out. And worst of all, no one was defending him, not even his so-called friends. Langston landed in Miami expecting a fresh start. He was wrong. As soon as he stepped off the jet, his phone started buzzing again. Texts, calls, emails, all bad news. His biggest business partner had pulled out of a deal worth over $30 million. "We can't be associated with this right now," the message read. "Your brand is toxic." Langston's stomach dropped. Then came an alert from his bank, a freeze on one of his accounts, pending investigation. He called his financial advisor. "Richard," the voice on the other end said carefully, "we've had complaints from clients. Some are pulling their investments." Langston couldn't believe it. "This is about one stupid moment," he snapped. The advisor didn't respond right away. Then came the worst call of all. His company's PR team. "We're recommending you step back from public appearances for a while," they said. "Maybe take a break from social media." Langston sat down on a bench near the airport exit. For the first time in his life, he felt powerless, not because he lost money, but because he had lost control. His image, his reputation, was slipping through his fingers like sand, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Langston tried to go back to normal. He posted a few more things, tried to act like everything was fine, but the world wasn't done with him. Not yet. A major tech conference he was supposed to headline suddenly pulled his name from the schedule. No explanation, just gone. His favorite podcast canceled an interview they had scheduled weeks ago. Again, no word. Then came the final blow. A video surfaced. It wasn't from the flight. This one was older, from a charity gala 2 years ago. In it, Langston was at the microphone, joking about athletes again. "They get paid millions to bounce a ball. I build real businesses." Now, that clip was everywhere. People started comparing that speech to what happened on the plane. And something strange happened. Stephen Curry didn't say a word, didn't tweet, didn't post, didn't even mention Langston's name. But the internet didn't need him to. They were doing it for him. Langston watched as memes flooded social media. One showed him pointing at Curry with the caption, "Thinking he won." Another showed Curry reading calmly while Langston fumed in the background. The difference between confidence and insecurity. And the worst one, a side-by-side of Langston bragging about power and money, and Curry quietly walking off the jet, headphones on, not even looking back. Under it, one man talks, the other changes the world. Langston finally understood. Money couldn't buy respect, and now, he had none left. This wasn't just a story about a flight. It was a story about ego, about how some people think money makes them better than others, and how, sometimes the universe has a way of reminding them that it doesn't. Langston thought he could flex on Curry and walk away looking strong. He didn't realize who he was dealing with. Stephen Curry isn't just rich, he's respected, not because of how much he has, but because of how he carries himself. Quiet, confident, unshaken. Langston, on the other hand, he built his life around showing off, thinking people admired him for his wealth. But admiration isn't the same as respect. And when push came to shove, Curry didn't even have to raise his voice. He just had to be himself. That was enough. Because real power doesn't need to prove itself. It shows up, does its thing, and walks away. No drama, no need for attention, just quiet strength. Langston learned the hard way that respect isn't bought, it's earned, and once you lose it, there's no amount of money that can buy it back. So what really happened on that flight? A man who thought he had it all, tried to put down someone who actually did, and in the end, he lost everything. Not his money, not right away, at least, but his reputation. That was gone before the plane even landed. This wasn't just about Stephen Curry, it was about a moment where ego met humility, where showing off met quiet confidence, and where the world got to watch what happens when you mistake attention for respect. Because here's the thing, you can buy a private jet, you can buy designer clothes, you can even buy followers, but you can't buy class, you can't buy dignity, and you can't buy the kind of presence that makes people look up, not because you demand it, but because you earn it. Langston learned that lesson the hard way. The question is, what would you do if you found yourself in his seat? Would you speak up, or would you sit back, stay quiet, and let the story pass you by? Either way, one thing's clear, never underestimate someone who doesn't need to prove anything, because they already know who they are. And the world does too.